As they worked, a strange peace settled over the house. They weren't just fixing a house, they were building a bridge over the wreckage of the last decade. Brock stopped by more often, offering dental advice that was actually just an excuse to bring more tacos. Even Barbara Jean seemed less manic, her ruffles traded for a pair of denim overalls that she wore with a surprising amount of grace. You know, Barbara Jean said, sitting on the floor of what would be the new kitchen, I used to think that being happy was about having everything perfect. But this place, it's a mess, and I've never felt more alive. Reba looked at her. But as Reba turned back to the window she was sanding, she found herself smiling. Maybe Van was right. Maybe the froth on the market wasn't a bubble about to burst, but a wave they could finally learn to ride. Chapter 10. The Neighbor from Hell. Just as things were looking up, the universe reminded Reba that her luck was rarely a straight line. A black sedan pulled up to the curb, and a woman who looked like she had been carved out of a very expensive piece of granite stepped out. She marched up the driveway, her heels clicking like gunshots. I am Mrs. Gable, the woman announced, not bothering with a greeting, and I am the president of the Homeowners Association for this block, which, I might add, does not allow unauthorized structural modifications or visual disturbances like that do thing in the window. She pointed to the turquoise wall, which was visible through the uncurtained glass. It's a feature wall, Barbara Jean piped up, appearing behind Reba. It's boho chic. It's a violation, Mrs. Gable snapped. And I have it on good authority from a very reputable real estate agent, a Mr. David Davids, that you are operating without a commercial flipping license. Reba's blood ran cold. David Davids told you that? He was very concerned about the integrity of the neighborhood, Mrs. Gable said, handing Reba a thick envelope. This is a cease and desist. You have 48 hours to provide proof of all permits and licenses, or the city will red tag this property. And believe me, I will be watching. She turned and marched back to her car, leaving Reba standing in the dust of her own ambition. He's trying to freeze us out, Reba whispered. He knows we can't afford a delay. If the city shuts us down, the bank pulls the loan, we lose the house, the money, and Van's credit. Van walked out, his linebacker shoulders sagging. What do we do, Mrs. H? Reba looked at the turquoise wall, then at her family. The fire in her red hair seemed to catch. Barbara Jean, get me a gallon of greige paint. We're going to give Mrs. Gable a neighborhood she'll never forget. Chapter 11. The Midnight Paint Job. The next 48 hours were a blur of caffeine and desperation. Reba spent the day at the city permit office, navigating a labyrinth of red tape that David Davids had clearly greased with a few well-placed donations. Meanwhile, back at the house, Van and Brock were performing a miracle of plumbing and electrical work. They weren't professionals, but they had stones and a YouTube tutorial for everything. If this wire touches this pipe, does the house explode? Brock asked, holding a pair of pliers. Only if you're thinking negative thoughts, Doc, Van shouted from the other room. Positive vibes only. When the sun went down, the real work began. They couldn't let Mrs. Gable see the turquoise wall through the window, but they didn't want to lose Barbara Jean's masterpiece just yet. We're going to build a false wall, Reba commanded. A thin sheet of drywall, painted the most boring shade of taupe known to man. We place it 6 inches in front of the turquoise wall. To the HOA, it looks neutral. To us, the dream stays alive. They work through the night, lit by work lamps, and fueled by the sheer spite of David David's sabotage. By 4 a.m., the house looked like a model home, sterile, safe, and utterly unoffensive. As they sat on the porch, watching the sunrise paint the Texas sky in shades of orange and gold that made Barbara Jean's turquoise look subtle by comparison, a sense of grim triumph settled over them. We did it, Cheyenne whispered, leaning her head on Van's shoulder. We're not done yet, Reba said, her eyes fixed on the road. Mrs. Gable will be here at 8, and I'm going to have the coffee ready. Chapter 12. The Storm. 8 o'clock came with the sound of a luxury car engine. Mrs. Gable arrived, flanked by a man in a city inspector's uniform. Reba stood on the porch, wearing her best "I'm a professional and I haven't slept in 3 days" smile. "Good morning, Mrs. Gable. Inspector, would you like a tour?" They walked through the house, the inspector checking permits with a meticulousness that suggested he had been told to find something wrong. But thanks to Reba's marathon at the city office, every T was crossed and every I was dotted. Mrs. Gable stood in the bedroom, staring at the false wall. "It's very neutral. It's what the market demands," Reba said, her heart hammering against her ribs. "Well," the inspector said, shutting his clipboard, "everything seems to be in order. No violations here." Mrs. Gable looked disappointed, but she couldn't argue with the paperwork. As they left, Reba leaned against the doorframe, her legs finally giving out. "We won," Van cheered, lifting Reba into a bear hug. But as the afternoon progressed, the sky turned a bruised purple. A classic Texas thunderstorm was brewing, the kind that turned streets into rivers and tested every shingle on a roof. "Van," Reba said, looking up at a dark spot on the ceiling. "Did you finish the flashing on the chimney?" Van's face went pale. "I was going to do that today, before the HOA lady arrived." A loud crack of thunder shook the house, and a single drop of water fell from the ceiling, landing right in the middle of the neutral taupe false wall. "Oh, no," Barbara Jean whispered. "The dream is getting wet." The sky opened up, and the steel house began to reveal its final, most devastating secret. It wasn't just a fixer-upper. It was a sieve. Epilogue. The satellite's goodbye. Revise. In the garage, Brock sat in the driver's seat of the SUV. He had found Barbara Jean's secret. He had listened to the tail end of her conversation with Hal. He didn't scream. He didn't yell. Instead, he opened the door and pulled her into a hug. "I'm sorry, BJ. I haven't been paying attention. I'll go to the opera. I'll go to the ballet. I'll even stop and ask for directions." As they walked into the house, the car remained silent. Then, the Iconostar light flickered. "Hello? Can someone help me?" a voice cried out. It was Brock. He had accidentally locked the doors from the outside while the security system was engaged. "Iconostar, this is Chrissy," a new, female voice answered. "How can I help you?" "I'm locked in. Get me out of here." "Are you the guy who gave Hal a hard time?" Chrissy asked, her voice cold. "No," Brock lied. "Liar," Chrissy said, and the line went dead. In the end, everyone got what they deserved. Reba had her house, Van had his victory, and Brock, well, Brock was learning that in a world of satellites and cell phones, you could never really hide from the truth. The Heart of a Survivor, a novel based on the life of Reba Hart. Chapter 1. The Barbecue of Despair. The Houston sun was an oppressive weight, a humid blanket that smelled of charcoal, lighter fluid, and the faint, sweet scent of blooming jasmine. Reba Hart stood on her back porch, her hand shielded against the glare as she watched her ex-husband, Brock, flip a burger with the kind of practiced enthusiasm usually reserved for heart surgery. This was the 15th barbecue of the season, or maybe it just felt like it. In the world of the hearts, the lines between family time and organized chaos had long since blurred into a smear of suburban domesticity that Reba sometimes found harder to navigate than her divorce. "I found you a man, Reba," Barbara Jean's voice chirped from the picnic table, cutting through the sizzle of meat. Barbara Jean, the woman who had replaced Reba as Brock's wife, was currently wearing a sun hat the size of a satellite dish and a smile that was dangerously sincere. Reba didn't turn around. She didn't need to. She could picture the exact shade of lipstick Barbara Jean was wearing. "Barbara Jean, if this is another one of your fixer-uppers, I'm going to need you to reconsider our friendship. And by reconsider, I mean end it." "Oh, hush." "He's lovely," Barbara Jean insisted, fluttering a printout from a dating website. "He's a widower. He loves cats. And he's a professional spoon player." "He's 80, Barbara Jean," Reba said, finally turning around. "He was barbecuing for the 15th time when I saw him last. I'm not dating your grandpa." "You missed the boat anyway," Barbara Jean sighed, her face falling into a tragic mask. "He ran off with his day nurse. Well, not so much ran as shuffled. But the point is, Reba, You're stagnating. Your romantic life is a desert, and I am the irrigation system. Reba rolled her eyes, her gaze drifting to her daughter, Cheyenne, who was currently trying to convince her husband, Van, that a latte was a sensible investment. Dating is when two people who like each other go out in public, Cheyenne explained to Van, as if she were teaching a golden retriever how to do long division. And they're called a latte because they cost a lot, Van. Keep up. Van nodded solemnly, his brow furrowed in deep concentration. Right, latte. Cost a lot. Got it. Hey, Mrs. H. When you asked me to watch Elizabeth while I went to the store to get her some orange juice, I didn't think you meant in Florida. Reba blinked. Van, the store is 3 blocks away. How did Florida enter the conversation? Sorry I took so long, Van said, ignoring the question of geography as he finally walked up the porch steps, empty-handed. But I couldn't remember which kind Elizabeth likes, pulp or no pulp, so I had to call Cheyenne, who needed a ride home from the library. Yeah, so he picked me up, Cheyenne added, and since both of us were hungry, we decided to go to lunch. It was a bonding experience, Mom.